Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 2022 American Diabetes Association Living with Diabetes Ask the Experts series. Today's topic is diabetes distress. Does it differ from clinical depression? My name is Jessica Grogan, Director of Community Engagement and Impact for the American Diabetes Association, and your host for today's event. Our Ask the Expert series is all about answering questions from our listeners, so start getting your questions ready. For those of you on the phone, press *3 on your keypad, and an operator will collect your question and place you in the queue so that you may have the opportunity to ask your question live. To participate online, type your name and question in the field below the streaming player. Press the Submit Question button, and your question will come directly to us. Stay with us through the hour, and you will learn useful tips to live well on your journey with diabetes. In addition, we invite you to provide us with feedback in a survey at the end of this event, so please stay with us. Okay, now a little bit about why we're here today. Because of the link between diabetes and heart health, the American Diabetes Association, in collaboration with the American Heart Association, has launched No Diabetes by Heart. With support from founding sponsor Novo Nordisk, as well as national sponsor Bayer, the No Diabetes by Heart initiative provides tools and resources for people living with type 2 diabetes to learn how to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. As part of the initiative, the ADA is holding this free educational Q&A once a month. We'll cover information and tips to help you take charge of your health. When you have diabetes, it increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. Make sure when you see your doctor to talk about your risk and work towards prevention. I'm happy to introduce our guest speaker today, Dr. Susan Guzman. Susan is the Director of Clinical Education and co-founder of the Behavioral Diabetes Institute. As a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in diabetes, her clinical and research interests include overcoming barriers to management, family issues with diabetes, and promoting attitudes of living well with chronic illness. She co-developed and co-facilitates BDI's HCP Continuing Medical Education, CME, programs. Many of BDI's clinical programs include Defeating the Depression-Diabetes Connection, an intensive multi-week series, the Just for Parents program, and Living Well with Complications were developed by Dr. Guzman. She integrates a viewpoint of acceptance and wellness to help people better utilize their strengths in living with diabetes. Hello, Susan.
Hi, thank you for that welcome. I'm excited to be here to talk with everyone.
Right. Thank you. As we are waiting for our callers and online listeners to chime in, I'm going to go ahead and kick off our first question. I understand diabetes distress is common in people with diabetes. Could you give us a bit of background on what diabetes distress means?
Yeah, sure. Diabetes distress is really meant to be an umbrella category that represents the emotional side of diabetes. It refers to the common frustrations, stresses, worries, strains that go with living and managing the big job of diabetes. And it's very, very common. We know that about 4 in 10 people who have diabetes will also have significant levels of diabetes distress. And when people have elevated distress, it shows up in their management. Not surprisingly, if you feel like, for example, that your efforts are pointless, that no matter how hard you try, it never seems good enough, obviously that's going to show up in the choices that you make. Or if you feel like you're doomed from diabetes, that's also going to show up in the choices that you make. And therefore it shows up in outcomes. So when we see elevated distress, we often see people struggling with management and having elevated A1Cs.
Thank you. If you're just joining us now, welcome to today's Ask the Expert Q&A. Diabetes distress, does it differ from clinical depression? As a reminder, for those of you on the phone, Press star 3 on your keypad, and an operator will collect your question and place you in the queue so you may have the opportunity to ask your question live. To participate online, type your name and question in the fields in the streaming player and submit the question button so your question will come directly to us. Remember, today's topic is diabetes distress. Does it differ from clinical depression? Let's remember to focus on today's topic when asking our questions.
Oh, while we wait, sorry, I was just going to say that the answer to that is which is your next slide. Sorry.
All right, now let's take our first question. Let's see, we have Genevieve from Newcastle, Delaware.
Hello.
Hello, Genevieve.
Yes, good afternoon. I did just want to ask if type 2 diabetic can be reversed.
Type 2 diabetes be reversed? That's a
Yes.
that's a great question that I think that's probably beyond what I should answer as a clinical psychologist. It's normal to, when you are diagnosed with diabetes, to think about what can I do to get rid of this. Adjusting to life with diabetes is a challenge, and obviously it's normal to want to think about what can I do to not have it anymore. One of the things that I encourage people to focus on is getting your diabetes in the safest place possible. For some people, that might actually be reversing diabetes. But the most important thing to ask yourself is, am I doing the necessary behaviors to help my numbers be in a safe place? And the American Diabetes Association recommends you look in general at 3 numbers, the ABCs of these. Your A is A1C, B is blood pressure, and C is cholesterol, LDL cholesterol in particular. And we know in general, in addition to not smoking, that if you have those ABCs in a safe place, you're in a safe place. And so sometimes that requires a lot of different things: medications, moving your body, paying attention to your nutrition, changing some of the some of your health behaviors to help keep your numbers in a safe place. And so I certainly am compassionate to wanting to know about reversing diabetes. And while that is possible for some people, I think that the more important focus is, are my numbers in a safe place? Jessica, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you really covered that great. What's important to know is that when you have diabetes, you need to address it as an ongoing situation. So often, in my experience, I would work with individuals who would have diabetes and they would let it get beyond themselves by thinking they were ahead of it. And it's really a tricky game. So it's important to make sure you're always in the driver's seat of your own care. A great question. Let's jump on to another question. Jennifer from Pittsburgh. Jennifer, you're live. Hello.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, there is diabetes distress, but when you're dealing with diabetes distress along with depression that's mild, it just complicates things even further. So it's not really a question, but it's a comment of some things I've been dealing with. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really important comment. Thank you for sharing that. So I think it's important to distinguish a little bit about how distress is different than depression, because people with diabetes can have either or both. And what we know is that either one can wreak havoc on the person who's with diabetes. And we think about clinical depression as reflecting more about hopelessness and powerlessness about life in general. And somebody that I worked with one time, I think, described it really well. And he said, it's like someone took a vacuum cleaner and sucked the joy out of my heart. And he said, Susan, when it's hard to give a damn whether you get out of bed or not in the morning, it's pretty hard to care about the big job of managing diabetes. And so when we think about clinical depression, we're thinking more about a mood problem that's pervasive and persistent. And what I mean by that is that it lasts most of the days, more days than not, and it's in most areas of your life. When we're talking about diabetes distress, that's really reflecting more of the expected common stresses and strains that go with life with diabetes. And it's really constricted to just diabetes related. So I might say that like someone with diabetes distress might say, I feel guilty I had that piece of cake. That stresses me out that I feel so badly about my choices. Whereas when someone has depression might answer the question like, I feel like a bad person that I had that piece of cake. And I feel like I'm failing at not just diabetes, but life in general. So it's with distress around diabetes, it's more focused just around diabetes management and the worries and concerns that go with that. And with depression, it's really feeling powerlessness about life in general. The good news about both of those is they're both responsive to treatment. Both are very treatable. And so if you're still feeling like you're having elevated depressive symptoms and diabetes distress, please take action because both are treatable.
Great explanation, Susan. We have another question here, but the caller doesn't want to be put live. The question is diabetes distress recognized as a diagnosis? If a patient tells the provider they have it, will they try to diagnose it as depression, or is there a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. Diabetes distress is not a diagnosis. And I think that's really important because, having tough feelings about a tough disease is expected and normal. And if you're telling a healthcare provider that you have diabetes distress, they may or may not know that term. It is being promoted very heavily by the American Diabetes Association as an important recognized component of living with diabetes, that your emotional self is not carved out from your physical self. The two are part of you as a whole person. And so I think though that to have a diagnosis of depression and really make sure that someone is assessing distress versus depression, it's really important that you have a conversation with someone. So while there's screeners that you can take that might say, maybe it's you need to have a further conversation with a healthcare professional, there are screeners that you can take to look at whether you might have diabetes distress or depression. I can recommend a free resource to you to see about your own level of diabetes distress. Diabetesdistress.org is a free website that has measures, different ones based on your type of diabetes, that can look at not only how distressed are you, but what are you distressed about. So it scores it and categorizes it and will give you feedback in the different areas. Some people maybe feel like they're not supported by their family, and that feels they have a lot of stress around that. And yet they might say, well, I feel like in general I'm managing diabetes well, and I'm not very stressed about that. So it's important to know, what is stressing you out, and that would help you pinpoint action. Now, when you talk to your healthcare professional about it, sometimes I recommend that people take this survey, print it out. There's an option where you can either save it as a PDF or print it out and take it in to show your healthcare professional. Most diabetes care professionals are being educated about the importance of the emotional side of diabetes.
It's so important to be able to have some tools that we can have at our own hands to take with us into our doctor's office to start those conversations. That's one of the biggest steps we can do in our own health. All right. Our next caller is Jonah from Berkeley, California. Hello, Jonah.
Hi. My question is I have type 2 diabetes. I don't have diabetic express. I've had but does because I didn't hear her name, does your expert come across people with disabilities in addition to that have disabilities in addition to diabetes, like I have cerebral palsy with low vision? So, for example, I'm not able to test the blood sugar. I take Genument. So how much, or does she have some tips to incorporate disabilities into diabetes?
That is a great question. I wish that diabetes just existed in a vacuum, but a lot of people are juggling more than one thing. And in fact, when you are juggling more than one thing, including vision impairment or an additional disability or a mental health condition, that stress can stack up, and one can feed back on the other. I know that my dad, who had type 2 diabetes, said, that when he had some complications from diabetes, he's like, I felt like, I had diets, where I'm not supposed to eat this for my kidney disease, and I'm not supposed to eat this for my diabetes. And so, you can see that as you have more conditions to manage, there can be more stresses and strains that go with it. Now, some tips for how to incorporate diabetes into life. I think that whether you have a disability or not, is to recognize there are a lot of options for management. And so, based on your own personal needs, to really work with your diabetes care team to figure out solutions. There are meters, blood glucose meters, that give you verbal feedback. So there are accommodation devices out there to help people who have vision impairments. I really encourage you to check those out if you have physical or visual impairment. There are a lot of accommodation devices that are available. And keep in mind that at the end of the day, you are an individual, and the goal is to help you fit diabetes into your life, whatever your life looks like and whatever your strengths and abilities are.
That's such a good point, Dr. Guzman. Work with your diabetes care team to see how you can make diabetes work for you. What technologies and new advances are coming out every day that can help make management easier for you so that you stay on top of your game. All right. Thank you for these calls. Our next call, let's see. Now here we have Sherwood from Philadelphia. Sherwood, you're live. Hello? Unfortunately, I think we lost her. Her question, however, was, how do you know what's safe and when drugs interact and cause enough symptoms and you feel confused with these things? How do you think, Dr. Guzman, people could help manage these multiple situations with new medications?
I think it's really important that you address these concerns with your healthcare professional. And, when you have concerns about medication, a lot of times what people are a little bit nervous to raise their concerns with their healthcare professional. And I think it's really important that if you're feeling confused about your medication, how you're taking it, if you're concerned that they're safe or not safe, these are valid questions. And these are the good reasons sometimes that people are reluctant or nervous about taking their medication. And rather than just decide that you don't want to take them, they give your care team a chance to explain to you, what are the benefits, what are the risks, what are the possible interactions. And your local pharmacist is actually also a really good resource if you have concerns about interactions. This is the expertise of a pharmacist. And I would recommend you use them also as a resource to find out about possible medication interactions or just to help you address your concerns about your medication. We do know that being on the right medication for you is one of the most important things you can do to help keep your diabetes in a safe place. And having concerns that your medications aren't safe, those are valid concerns that should be addressed by your care team.
Thank you. I think that's so important to think outside the box when you're thinking about who's in your care team. Is it a pharmacist? Is it a care coordinator? Who else can you bring to the table to help you with your own management?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our next caller is Troy from Pennsylvania. Hello, Troy.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you
Tammy?
today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I know that we're comparing diabetes to stress and clinical depression. I'm wondering, as a part of diabetes to stress, if you're mostly seeing signs that would make us want to compare it to clinical depression, or you're also seeing other emotional burdens such as anxiety or things of that nature.
Now that's a fabulous question. And the reason I think it was put together as a topic is because what we learned is that when we did more sophisticated studies about how common depression is in people with diabetes, we learned that a lot of what people with diabetes were reporting when we actually talked to them face to face was that it wasn't really depression that people were talking to us about. It was diabetes distress. And so a lot of what we were calling depression in people with diabetes actually turns out to be diabetes distress. Now, does it show up in other ways? Absolutely. That we know, again, the tough thoughts and feelings that go with diabetes often have a lot more to do with anxiety. So, worrying about complications, worrying that you're not doing enough, worrying about worrying too much. I often hear from parents. So, anxiety, fears, worries, frustrations, disappointment, discouragement, overwhelm, and sometimes what we call diabetes burnout, that isn't necessarily related to the emotions that can be confused with depression. They can certainly also reflect, fears, worries, concerns, and things that are more related to anxiety.
Thank you for that call. I'm going to go ahead and try an online question that we had come in from Emmy. Can you talk about risk factors for diabetes distress? Are there times where it would be more likely to emerge?
Yes, we see that people have more likelihood to have diabetes distress when there's been a change in their life. Sometimes it's a diabetes management change, like, for example, if you just started on insulin or if you just started on a continuous glucose monitor. I mean, sometimes they're even changes that you might see as positive in your management, but it's a change. And so when there's a change, stressors tend to go up. And sometimes it reflects a life change. And as was noted in on one of our earlier calls, when you start stacking up other chronic health conditions that you have to manage, like a complication or another diagnosis of some other medical condition, that those are times also that we notice greater levels of distress reported by people. So, when there's more on your plate, you're more likely to show diabetes distress.
Thank you. Another great online question from Christine in Colorado. Is there a link between the support and education provided to those with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes and their level of distress? If so, can primary doctors be more educated on the topic?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I would love for there to be more nuance in how we deliver diabetes education. because I think sometimes, we're tempted as healthcare professionals to give the giant diabetes to-do list to people, and it can contribute to overwhelm and worry and feeling like you're not doing enough to manage your diabetes. And we know that if we help people start to think through how the different factors that can impact your personal blood glucose numbers, what are the choices that you make that influence your numbers, can help you feel more empowered and like what you do matters. And, while one of our colleagues sat in a standard diabetes education class and she quit counting at 150 separate tasks that people were being asked to do. And not all of those are created equal in terms of what you get, what we call bang for your buck. So, like there's, if drinking more water, for example, while important, it isn't going to do a lot to help manage your blood glucose levels. And so what we know is that, based on your personal risk profile, what are some of the key behaviors that will help you get your numbers into a safer place? And so I in a dream world, I feel like that we would consider the emotional side of diabetes and how we deliver in general diabetes care. I feel like we're moving more towards that direction so that we can help people. Like, for example, if you have high distress or even a mental health challenge like depression, that we break tasks into smaller ones. We help you prioritize key behaviors. You don't have to do everything perfectly to live a long, healthy, and happy life with diabetes. And figuring out, which are the key choices for managing your diabetes is important.
Thank you, Susan. At the conclusion of our Q&A segment, you're welcome to complete a short survey when you complete the event. Your feedback is very important to us and will help us to inform for future planning. If you've been asking great questions, and I hope you will participate in our survey. Now let's get back to some more questions. Another online question from Catherine: can diabetes increase the incidence of ADD?
So ADD meaning attention deficit disorder. While I don't know if there's a link between an actual diagnosis of ADD and diabetes, what we do know is that anything that impacts attention and concentration is going to show up in diabetes management. Because, let's face it, there, all of the tasks that are involved in managing diabetes require some attention to detail, planning your meals, remembering to take your medications on time in the right amounts, checking your blood glucose numbers, scheduling appointments for follow-up with your healthcare team. Those all require concentration. And so anxiety disorders, depression, attention deficit disorder, those all can have an impact on diabetes. And elevated blood glucose numbers can show up in your ability to concentrate. So if you have elevated blood glucose, it may also impair your concentration. So, the arrow can go both ways, and it can become a vicious circle. So I just recommend, whether you're intervening for the attention concentration problem or you're intervening to help you get your diabetes numbers in a safer place, they're both good places to start. The important thing is to start.
Thank you. It's a great explanation for all the pieces of this puzzle we're trying to put together in everyday management. Another question we have from a caller, it's going to be Yolanda from Virginia. Hello, Yolanda.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. Actually, this is Miss Bennett. I was calling, how do you deal with diabetes distress from family members? Because they oftentimes want to tell you how and what to eat. I do find that a lot, that some of this distress come from family members who aren't well versed or educated on diabetes management. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is one of the primary sources of diabetes distress, which is, if you take the screener, it'll show up as what's called family distress. And how people really talk about that is the diabetes police. So how do you arrest the diabetes police in your life? And that's a great question. So the best way to start helping, change that is to have a conversation. And I would recommend that you do a little homework before you do that. On my organization's website, we have something called a diabetes etiquette. It's the little rule book for people who don't have diabetes. And you can access that at behavioraldiabetes.org. You can download it for free. And it's actually a way to start a conversation. It has things in there like, don't tell me horror stories about your grandmother who had diabetes, or don't give me unsolicited advice. But it also has do's, like do offer to join me in a behavior change, like taking a walk after dinner, or ask me how you could be supportive. So that might be give you some ideas about what you would actually find helpful. So I always encourage people before they're trying to tell people like what you're helpful to think about if you're going to give them something to do instead, make sure you think about what would you actually find helpful. So while you don't want them to ask, should you be eating that, for example, you might say, I find that, not only unhelpful, but it's now with modern diabetes care, there are no off-limit foods. It's all about timing and amount and deciding when it's right for me. And but be prepared to say, if you're really trying to be helpful and supportive around my diabetes, fill in the blank. This is what you could do instead. Give them a job to do that you would actually find helpful. That is how I would recommend at least getting. So recognize, some people, not everybody is going to change. And so I think, you pick and choose the people in your family who you most think that would be open to having this conversation. And, if you think that most people who do police your behavior are doing, they love you. And so give them a job to do that you would actually find helpful in your managing of your diabetes.
I really like that. Trying to find ways to have people help you. Giving everyone tasks is a great way to go about that. We have another caller, Jane from Georgia. Hello, Jane.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi. What distresses me is I get like a brain fog that I can't concentrate like I would like to, and then I just sit, don't do anything, and I know that's not good because I also have fibromyalgia, which I know that can cause depression as well. But the type 2 diabetes, I read about trying to concentrate. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that brain fog or concentration is both a symptom of depression, and it's also a symptom of high blood glucose. So it's really important that you have a conversation with your healthcare professional to tease that apart a little bit, because though they're both treatable but require different treatments. So if that is indeed a symptom of depression, and how you describe that sort of feeling, like your get up and go is got up and left, that's a very common experience of people who have clinical depression. That's probably not likely to be related to just simply diabetes distress, but that certainly, as you said, is distressing when you feel like you can't get yourself going. That's a pretty scary experience, and awful, and I'm sure not a great place to be. And obviously that can show up in your management as well. So I would really encourage you to talk with your healthcare professional about, getting to the bottom of what's causing that brain fog for you, because whether it's diabetes or depression or some combination or something else, that getting it treated so that you can take action is really important. You can feel better. This doesn't have to be just the way your life is now.
Thank you. I'm going to jump over to an online question from Manuel. Can patients with diabetes distress be prescribed medication? Would they benefit from this?
Well, again, diabetes distress is not a mental health diagnosis. And so what we suggest if you have high distress is to pinpoint what are the areas that are really bugging you. So, for example, like we just heard from that caller that talked about, main stressor for her was the diabetes police in her life. So, if she were to take the diabetes distress scale, that would be elevated for her, and it gave her an idea of where to perhaps target um, action so that she knows what to do to help her distress. And so that's what I would suggest is that if you rather than thinking about having a medication solution for distress, it's more about what's really bugging me and then taking action on those specific things.
Thank you. We're going to jump over to a caller, Barbara. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, this is Barbara from Southfield, Michigan. I'm trying to manage my diabetes with diet and exercise. It's making me anxietous between times with A1C, what the results are, and if I'm doing okay or not. And I tend to overprogram myself. And this summer, I was sick with bronchitis for 2 months, and I had to take these steroids, and that drove up my blood sugar. And I had a broken foot, and that made me couldn't exercise. And I think this diabetic distress test you're talking about that I guess I could find online might be helpful for me to try to not push so much into my program. But right now, there's just too many family issues that are tugging at me to make me feel I have to try to help them. And there's a lot on my shoulders here. And I do take Xanax. I'm prescribed. They told me I can take 3.5 Xanax a day. I usually only take 2, but I just get overwhelmed with all of these things that I have to do and try and do it without medication. That's because my stomach doesn't like very many medications. So maybe I've put too much into this question. Maybe I'm pushing myself in too many directions at once to try to exercise for the blood sugar to keep it down. And I guess that's sort of a summation, but it's a complex question, I know.
Oh, that's real life diabetes. So thank you for that question. Nobody here gets to do one thing at a time, right? Your life is more than managing diabetes, and for a lot of people, their own health can take a back burner to other demands in your life, and when you're trying to manage with things like exercise, when exercise becomes something that you can't do, obviously that's the main part of your treatment plan has been taken off the table for you, which obviously is going to come with stress. So a couple key things in what you just talked about. One is that you matter too, and I feel like that's something that we all can't hear often enough, because again, managing diabetes is a big job, and it's a lot of it is your own self-management, and so it does require you to remember that you matter too, and to prioritize some of your own self-care. And while I think, it's super important that we look at all aspects of managing diabetes and to think about how, moving your body and managing your meal planning and all of that is important, that we know that with good care, like it or not, unfortunately, most people will require medication. And that's not your fault. That is not a failure. It's really, really important to know that. And if some of the frontline diabetes medications cause tummy troubles for you, to talk to your healthcare team about other options. There's a lot of kind of exciting treatments for managing diabetes, and that not only can protect your blood glucose levels in a safe place, but also can help protect your heart and your kidneys. And it's, again, needing medication is not a failure. And while it feels like that for many people, I feel like that's unfortunate, because a lot of times managing diabetes well does require a medication, and there's a lot of medications that you may be able to tolerate if you're willing. So you matter, and focusing your priorities on taking actions that will keep your diabetes in a safe place. And remember, thinking about your A1C, your blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, and not smoking.
Thank you. That was a great answer. I'm going to take one more question from our online submissions. From Jan, how do I break my addiction to sugar? I already have prediabetes and I'm concerned it'll turn into full-blown diabetes.
Yeah, struggling with sugar or carbohydrate feelings of addiction are common. Eating challenges are, not just common in prediabetes and diabetes, but, for people in general. And I think that, again, if you have access to talking with a dietitian about some simple and practical strategies to make health behavior changes and that fit into your life, that's a key way to start, is just having a conversation so that you can come up with a plan that's specific to you, your life, your needs.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. Leroy. Hello, Leroy. No, are you there, Leroy? Fortunately, I think we lost Leroy. Let me jump to another question from someone who did not want to go live. What is the current evidence on the connection between poorly controlled blood glucose and dementia? Could that be related?
We do know that sustained elevated blood glucose over time does take a toll on a person's vascular system, including your cerebrovascular system, or the vessels that go to your brain. So there is a connection between, and we're not talking about like a single high blood sugar, a single A1C, or even over a short period of time having an elevated blood glucose level, but sustained elevated blood glucose levels can show up in memory problems as you age, and cerebrovascular challenges, and that's again why it's so important that we talk about our risk for heart disease and stroke, because diabetes affects anywhere blood goes, and so blood does go to your brain and your heart, and we know that protecting those organs is really important to living a long and healthy life, including holding on to your memories.
All right, that's so important to know. We want to hold on to our memories as much as we can. Well, that wraps up our last question for today's session. A few items before we close today. Dr. Guzman, could you give us 3 key takeaway points you want to be sure our listeners take home from today's discussion?
Yes, the first one is that if you're struggling with diabetes management, to really remember that you're not alone. That a lot of times when people are struggling, it can be a very lonely experience. And we know that having challenges with diabetes is remarkably common, and having elevated distress is very common. About 40% of people will have elevated diabetes distress. And again, remember that whether it's depression or diabetes distress, that both are treatable. The second thing is to really to take a moment to consider how you are doing with your diabetes emotionally. How are you doing? And if you're a loved one that's called in, thank you for being here. And maybe that you could share with your loved one what you learned about diabetes distress, and take a moment to ask them, how are you doing? And you can also, if you're interested in learning more about your own level of diabetes and what might be stressing you out, go to diabetesdistress.org, and that's where you can take the free survey. And it's also a good way you can print it and take it to your doctor. It's a great way to start a conversation if you're looking to get to the bottom of some of this stuff for you, and to maybe begin the conversation around getting help. And the third point I really would like you to leave with is that you can live a long, healthy, and happy life with diabetes. And while it does require some effort on your part and good care from your healthcare team, I think it's really important to know that your efforts are worthwhile the effort.
Thank you, Dr. Guzman, for that information and takeaway points. Now, to help you feel confident in your ability to manage diabetes and heart health, we encourage you and your loved ones to talk to your doctor or healthcare provider about your risk for heart disease, stroke, and kidney disease. Go to knowdiabetesbyheart.org and learn more. Register for the next event at diabetes.org/experts. And sign up for a diabetes education program near you. Also consider signing up for the ADA's free Living with Type 2 Diabetes program. Links to these resources can be found on our registration page, diabetes.org/experts. Thank you for all of your great questions you called and wrote in with. We are sorry we were unable to get to all of your questions during this live Q&A event. If you have questions about this event, you are welcome to contact us at askada@diabetes.org or by calling 1-800-DIABETES. That's 1-800-342-2383. Please stay on the line for our survey to help us with future planning of our events. Thriving with diabetes takes a team, and we're here to support you. A special thanks to our expert, Dr. Susan Guzman, and I am Jessica Grogan. And on behalf of the ADA team, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you at our future events. On November 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, The Gift of Sight. And on December 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Healthy Eating, Traveling, and the Holidays. And also on December 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Moving Barriers and Overcoming Obstacles, a family-focused event. If you have questions about this event, please email askada@diabetes.org. Include Ask the Experts Q&A in your subject line. And thank you for joining the Ask the Experts today. Now to our survey. Thank you for participating in the American Diabetes Association Ask the Experts event. We hope that you benefited from the experience. Please stay on the line to complete the survey about the event. Your valuable feedback is essential for us to reach our program goals and improve future events. All responses will remain confidential. Question 1. Please rate the extent to which you felt the event met your expectations. For did not meet my expectations, press 1. For somewhat met my expectations, press 2. For moderately met my expectations, press 3. For met my expectations, press 4. For exceeded my expectations, press 5. Again, that is, please rate the extent to which you felt the event met your expectations. For did not meet my expectations, press 1. For somewhat met my expectations, press 2. For moderately met my expectations, press 3. For met my expectations, press 4. For exceeded my expectations, press 5. If you think you could use some support to manage your diabetes, Check out the Living with Diabetes program, where you can receive email information and e-brochures with tips on eating, fitness, and emotional health. Check out our registration page, diabetes.org/experts. Our next question: after attending this event, do you plan to attend a future Ask the Experts event? For yes, press 1. For no, press 2. For not sure, press 3. Again, that is, after attending this event, do you plan to attend a future Ask the Experts event? For yes, press 1. For no, press 2. For not sure, press 3. Visit knowdiabetesbyheart.org/talkheart to access a new educational tool on risk and prevention of heart disease and stroke when you have diabetes. Our third question: please rate your agreement with the following statement. By attending the event, I gained knowledge on the presented topics. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Again, please rate your agreement with the following statement. By attending the event, I gained knowledge on the presented topic. Disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither disagree nor agree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. You can find delicious and healthy recipes and menus to improve your diet. Visit the website diabetesfoodhub.org. Our next question is: please rate your agreement with the following statement. The knowledge I have gained is relevant to mine or my loved one's diabetes. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Again, please rate your agreement with the following statement. The knowledge I have gained is relevant to mine or my loved one's diabetes. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Did you know that there are approximately 37 million Americans living with diabetes? You are not alone. Our next question: please rate your agreement with the following statement. I feel confident that I can apply the knowledge I gained to help manage mine or my loved one's diabetes. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Please rate your agreement with the following statement. I feel confident that I can apply the knowledge I gained to help manage mine or my loved one's diabetes. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. For agree, press 5. Check out the Heart Disease Risk Calculator at cvriskcalculator.com and find out if you are at risk for heart disease. Please rate your agreement with the following statement. I intend to use the knowledge I gained in a new or future appointment with a healthcare professional. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Again, please rate your agreement with the following statement. I agree to use the knowledge I gained in a new or future appointment with a healthcare professional. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For agree, or for somewhat agree, press 4. And for agree, press 5. Did you know that there are approximately 250,000 people in the United States with diabetes-related kidney failure? Talk to your healthcare provider about your risks. Get tested and prevent diabetes-related kidney disease. Our next question, please rate your agreement with the following statement. Attending this event promoted my feelings of belonging and community. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. For agree, press 5. Again, please rate your agreement with the following statement. Attending this event promoted my feelings of belonging and community. For agree, press 1. For disagree, press 1. For somewhat disagree, press 2. For neither agree nor disagree, press 3. For somewhat agree, press 4. For agree, press 5. Diabetes education programs provide services that address your diabetes concerns and will empower you with the knowledge and skills to manage your diabetes. You can find a program near you by visiting diabetes.org/experts. Next question is, before participating in this event, how confident did you feel speaking with a healthcare professional about you or your loved one's increased risk for heart disease or stroke? For not at all confident, press 1. For not very confident, press 2. For neutral, press 3. For somewhat confident, press 4. And for very confident, press 5. Again, before participating in this event, how confident did you feel speaking with a healthcare professional about you or your loved one's increased risk for heart disease and stroke? For not at all confident, press 1. For not very confident, press 2. For neutral, press 3. For somewhat confident, press 4. For very confident, press 5. Keeping blood glucose within the target range of 70 to 180 milligrams over deciliter 70% of the time is the international recommendation for diabetes control. Consider asking your provider about getting a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM, to help you control your blood glucose. Now, after participating in this event, how confident do you feel speaking with a healthcare professional about you or your loved one's risk for heart disease and stroke? For not at all confident, press 1. For not very confident, press 2. For neutral, press 3. For somewhat confident, press 4. For very confident, press 5. After participating in this event, how confident do you feel speaking with a healthcare professional about you or your loved one's increased risk for heart disease and stroke? For not at all confident, press 1. For not very confident, press 2. For neutral, press 3. For somewhat confident, press 4. For very confident, press 5. Physical activity is an important part of reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease and promotes physiologic well-being. If you find it difficult to move due to injuries or chronic pain, ask for a referral to a physical therapist to work with you and find a program that works for you. We strive to create programs and services that represent the full diversity of the ADA community. We are asking the following questions about demographics to ensure that we are meeting this goal. Please select which of the following best describes you. For woman, press 1. For man, press 2. For non-binary, press 3. For prefer not to answer, press 4. Again, which of the following best describes you? For woman, press 1. For man, press 2. For non-binary, press 3. For prefer not to answer, press 4. By not using tobacco products, keeping your blood glucose, blood pressure, and lipids within target levels, you can reduce your risk of developing cardiovascular disease. Now, please select which of the following best describes you. For the silent generation, born between 1928 to 1945, press 1. For the boomer generation, born between 1946 to 1964, press 2. For Generation X, born between 1965 to 1980, press 3. For the millennial generation, born between 1981 to 1996, press 4. For Generation Z, born between 1997 to 2012, press 5. For prefer not to answer, press 6. Please select which of the following best describes you. For the silent generation, born between 1928 to 1945, press 1. For the boomer generation, born between 1946 to 1964, press 2. For Generation X, born between 1965 to 1980, press 3. For the millennial generation, born between 1981 to 1996, press 4. For Generation Z, born between 1997 to 2012, press 5. For Prefer Not to Answer, press 6. We hope you have enjoyed this Ask the Experts program, and you'll join us for our next month for another session with an expert. Check out the calendar at diabetes.org/experts. Our final question for today, please select which of the following best describes you. For African American or Black, press 1. For American Indian or Alaskan Native, press 2. For Asian or Asian American, press 3. For Hispanic, Latinx, or Spanish origin, press 4. For Middle Eastern or North African, press 5. For Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, press 6. For white, press 7. For Prefer Not to Answer, press 8. Again, please select which of the following best describes you. For African American or Black, press 1. For American Indian or Alaskan Native, press 2. For Asian or Asian American, press 3. For Hispanic, Latinx, or Spanish origin, press 4. For Middle Eastern or North African, press 5. For Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, press 6. For white, press 7. Or Prefer Not to Answer, press 8. Thank you for answering these questions, and please join us again at a future Ask the Experts event. To learn more, go to diabetes.org/experts. Again, that's diabetes.org/experts.